The sun hung low over the dusty outskirts of Willow Creek, casting long shadows across the cracked asphalt of the old fairgrounds. It was the kind of small-town gathering where everyone knew everyone's business. Booths selling homemade pies, kids chasing each other through the crowds, and the faint hum of generators powering the rides. But amid the laughter and chatter, a sharp ripple of mockery cut through the air like a knife. There, by the edge of the parking lot, stood 15-year-old Lucas, his shoulders hunched under the weight of stairs. His bike, an ancient rusted Schwinn with peeling red paint and a chain that rattled like loose bones, was propped against a fence. It was all he had left from his dad, who'd vanished 2 years back in a haze of unpaid bills and whispered rumors of bad debts. Lucas had pedaled it here from the trailer park on the hill, dreaming of entering the amateur race. But now, a group of older teens from the wealthier side of town circled him, their jeers echoing. "Look at that junk heap," one snorted. A broad-shouldered kid named Tyler, with a Letterman jacket slung over his shoulder. "What, you think that relic's gonna outrun a real bike? Go back to scraping rust, trailer trash." The others joined in, their laughter booming, shoving Lucas lightly at first, then harder, until he stumbled back, his cheeks burning red. A few adults nearby glanced over but looked away, murmuring about kids being kids. The humiliation twisted in Lucas's gut like a knot he couldn't untie. Another reminder that in Willow Creek, you were only as good as what you owned. If this story is already pulling at your heartstrings, smash that like button right now. It helps spread these tales of quiet courage far and wide. Then, as the taunts peaked, a low rumble shattered the afternoon calm. It started distant, like thunder rolling in from the horizon, but grew into a symphony of raw power, engines snarling, exhaust pipes coughing plumes of smoke. Heads turned as a convoy of motorcycles crested the hill, their chrome gleaming under the fading sun. 50 strong they were, black leather vests patched with the fierce emblem of the Hells Angels, bandanas whipping in the wind. They weren't just riders, they were a brotherhood forged in fire, men who'd stared down wars and worse, now thundering into town like avenging shadows. At the lead was Ethan "Hawk" Ramirez, a weathered veteran in his late 40s, his face etched with scars from a life of hard choices. His eyes, sharp as flint under a salt and pepper beard, scanned the scene as he killed the engine of his custom Harley. Hawk had ridden these roads for decades, carrying the ghost of a promise made under desert stars 20 years ago, to his fallen brother in arms, who'd begged him to watch over the lost ones. The kids like the ones he'd grown up around. That vow had faded with time, buried under club runs and personal demons, until a chance glimpse of Lucas's bike from the road reignited it. It was the same model his old friend had cherished, a symbol of stubborn pride. Hawk signaled his crew to halt, the bike settling into a wall of silence that drowned out the fairground noise. The bullies froze, their smirks evaporating as the angels dismounted in unison, boots thudding against the gravel. Hawk strode forward, his presence commanding without a word, the scent of leather and motor oil trailing him. He knelt beside Lucas, ignoring the wide-eyed stares, and ran a calloused hand over the bike's frame. "She's a fighter," he said softly, his voice gravelly from years of wind and smoke. "Just like you. What's her name?" Lucas blinked, wiping his nose on his sleeve, too stunned to speak at first. Red," he stammered. "After my dad's truck." Hawk nodded, a faint smile cracking his stoic mask. "Red's got heart. These boys wouldn't know." He stood, turning to the group with a gaze that pinned them like insects. "You think mocking a man's ride makes you tough? Real strength's in lifting up, not tearing down." The lead bully, Tyler, shifted uneasily, mumbling something about a joke. But Hawk's crew fanned out subtly, a silent wall of loyalty that spoke volumes. No threats, no fists, just the unyielding code of men who'd chosen family over blood. The crowd hushed as Hawk pulled a wrench from his belt, the metallic clink echoing. With deliberate care, he tightened a loose bolt on Lucas's chain, the angels pitching in one by one, polishing the frame, adjusting the seat, their hands moving with the precision of old mechanics. Whispers rippled through the onlookers. Who were these outsiders? Why here? Why now? For Lucas, it was like a dream unfolding. Tears pricked his eyes as a burly rider named Marcus handed him a clean rag, saying, "Wipe her down, kid, she's ready to run." But beneath the act of kindness lay Hawk's deeper reckoning. That forgotten promise gnawed at him, the one to protect the vulnerable, to honor the brother who died saving his life in a forgotten skirmish overseas. Willow Creek's underbelly hid its own shadows, rumors of a corrupt sheriff turning a blind eye to local gangs preying on the poor, families like Lucas's getting squeezed out. Hawk had heard it on the wind during a fuel stop, and seeing the boy reminded him that some debts weren't paid in money, but in action. As the sun dipped lower, painting the bikes in golden hues, he clapped Lucas on the shoulder. "Race with us tomorrow. We'll show 'em what real riders look like." The bullies slunk away, the fairground buzzing with a new energy. Lucas gripped the handlebars, the weight of isolation lifting like morning fog. Little did he know, this intervention was the spark, drawing Hawk's entire crew into a web of loyalty that would unearth buried secrets, challenge the town's rotten core, and forge an unbreakable bond. For in the world of the Hells Angels, a simple act wasn't just help. It was a vow renewed, echoing through the dust and roar of engines into the night. As twilight settled, the convoy revved to life once more, but Hawk lingered, watching Lucas pedal home with newfound fire. The road ahead twisted with unseen dangers, whispers of threats against the boy, echoes of Hawk's past catching up, but for the first time in years, purpose burned bright in his chest. The promise lived again, pulling them all toward redemption's horizon. The moon climbed high over Willow Creek that night, its pale light filtering through the pines like a watchful eye. Lucas pedaled home along the winding dirt path, the upgraded Schwinn humming smoother than it ever had, thanks to the angel's hands. Red's chain no longer rattled. It whispered now, a quiet ally against the darkness. But as he crested the hill toward the trailer park, the glow of distant headlights caught his eye. Cars idling at the entrance, engines purring like predators. His stomach twisted. Those weren't friendly lights. They belonged to the kind of trouble that had chased his dad away. Back at the fairgrounds, the angels had dispersed into the shadows of the old motel on the outskirts. A weathered stopover, where neon signs flickered promises of vacancy. Hawk leaned against his Harley in the gravel lot, the cool night air carrying the faint scent of pine sap and cooling metal. His crew gathered around a low fire pit, flames dancing on their faces, Marcus cracking open a beer, another rider named Jacob wiping grease from his knuckles. They'd done good work today, but Hawk's mind churned like an idling engine. That boy, Lucas, reminded him too much of himself at 15, scrappy, scarred by absence, clinging to a piece of the past like it was armor. "Earth to Hawk," Marcus rumbled, tossing him a bottle. The big man, built like a oak with tattoos snaking up his arms from tours in dusty war zones, had been Hawk's right hand since the club days. "You look like you saw a ghost out there. What's eating you?" Hawk caught the beer, twisting the cap with a sharp pop. The fizz mirrored the unease bubbling in his chest. "The kid's bike. It's the same as Rico's, the one he rode before that ambush took him." Rico, his brother-in-arms from those endless desert patrols, the one who'd pulled Hawk from a burning Humvee, only to bleed out under the stars. "Promised I'd look out for the ones left behind. Forgot it till today." The fire crackled, embers swirling upward. Jacob, lean and sharp-eyed, with a veteran's quiet intensity, nodded slowly. "Willow Creek's got its own ghosts. Heard from a pit stop buddy. Sheriffs turning blind eyes to some crew shaking down the trailer parks. Debts, Protection rackets. Sounds like what chased the boy's old man off. Hawk's jaw tightened, the scar along his cheek pulling taut. He'd ridden into this town on a whim, scouting a route for the next club run, but now it felt like fate's hook. The promise to Rico wasn't just words, it was etched in the dog tags he still wore under his vest. A cold weight against his skin. Loyalty like that didn't fade. It simmered, waiting for the right spark. And Lucas? He was that spark, vulnerable in a place where the powerful preyed on the forgotten. A low growl from the road snapped their attention. Headlights pierced the darkness. 2 sedans rolling up slow, tires crunching gravel. The angels straightened, hands instinctively near their belts, but no weapons, just readiness born of brotherhood. Out stepped 3 men in crisp shirts and slacks, the kind of clean that screamed small-town authority. Leading them was Deputy Harlan, a stocky figure with a badge glinting under the motel's sign, his mustache twitching like a cornered rat. "Evening, gentlemen," Harlan drawled, his voice oily as spilled motor oil. He eyed their bikes, the Hells Angels patch prominent on every vest. "Heard about your little show at the fair. Real heartwarming. But we don't take kindly to outsiders stirring up trouble." Hawk stepped forward, his boots deliberate on the dirt, the firelight casting long shadows that made him seem taller, unyielding. "Wasn't trouble. Was righting a wrong. Kids picking on one of their own doesn't sit well." Harlan chuckled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Behind him his deputies shifted, hands hovering near holsters. "That own of yours? Boy from the wrong side of the tracks? His family's got debts older than he is. You start playing hero, you might find yourselves owing some too." The implication hung heavy. The sheriff's office wasn't blind. It was bought, tangled in the same webs that squeezed families like Lucas's. Marcus growled low, but Hawk raised a hand, silencing him. This wasn't a brawl. It was a test of the code. Stand firm, without breaking. "We're just passing through," Hawk said evenly, his gaze locking onto Harlan's. "But if protecting a kid means trouble, we'll wear it like our patches." The deputy smirked, glancing at the bikes. "Enjoy the night. Roads get rough around here after dark." They climbed back into their cars, engines revving as they peeled away, taillights fading into the black. The angels exchanged looks, the air thick with unspoken resolve. Jacob spat into the fire. "That's no idle chat. They're warning us off." Hawk stared down the empty road, the wind whispering through the pines like a distant warning. He thought of Lucas pedaling alone, unaware of the shadows closing in. The promise pulled tighter now, a chain linking past to present. By morning, he'd ride to the boy, offer more than a fixed bike, a shield of leather and loyalty. But as the fire died to coals, Hawk felt the weight of old scars. Rico's last breath, the guilt of survival, the corruption that festered in places like this. Willow Creek wasn't just a town, it was a mirror, reflecting the battles he'd thought buried. Miles away, Lucas chained Red to the trailer's porch, the metal links clinking softly. Inside, his mom, Sarah, a weary woman with lines etched by endless shifts at the diner, looked up from her mending. "Rough day, kiddo?" Her voice was soft, laced with the fatigue of holding their world together. He hesitated, the day's events tumbling out, the bullies, the roar of engines, the man with the scars who saw something in him. Sarah's eyes widened, a mix of fear and flicker of hope. Hell's Angels. Lucas, that's not the company we need. But if they helped, maybe there's good in it. She pulled him into a hug, the scent of faded lavender and worry clinging to her. Yet as they turned in, a shadow passed the window, brief, gone in a blink. Outside, the night pressed close, engines idling unseen, watching. Dawn crept in with a rosy hue, painting the trailer park in hesitant light. Hawk's convoy assembled at first blush, bikes lined like sentinels. The race was today, but so was the reckoning. Whispers from the night confirmed it. The deputy's visit wasn't coincidence. The town's underbelly stirred, threats coiling around Lucas like smoke. Hawk revved his engine, the roar of vow thundering to life. Family chosen meant riding into the storm, not away. And as the sun broke free, they rolled toward the fairgrounds, chrome flashing, ready to silence more than just a crowd. And now, I invite you to leave in the comments where you're watching from and the exact hour you heard this story. We wish to know how far these northern confessions travel and at what moments they reach you. The morning sun clawed its way over the horizon, bathing Willow Creek in a golden haze that did little to chase away the chill in the air. Engines thrummed like a waking beast as Hawk's convoy cut through the mist-shrouded streets, the Hells Angels' bikes slicing the quiet with purposeful growls. Chrome caught the light in sharp flashes, tires humming over potholed roads that wound past weathered barns and forgotten fields. Hawk led the pack, his Harley steady under him, the vibration syncing with the steady beat of resolve in his chest. Behind him, Marcus and Jacob flanked the group, their silhouettes imposing against the dawn. 50 riders strong, a rolling testament to bonds forged in fire and kept through storms. Lucas was already at the fairgrounds when they arrived, red propped beside the starting line, its frame gleaming from yesterday's polish. The boy stood tall for once, no hunch in his shoulders, though his eyes darted nervously to the gathering crowd. Booths reopened with the sizzle of frying dough and the chatter of early arrivals, but tension laced the air like exhaust fumes. The amateur racetrack, a makeshift loop of dirt and gravel circling the old rodeo ring, buzzed with entrants. Shiny mountain bikes from the affluent kids, their parents cheering from folding chairs. Tyler and his crew lounged nearby, arms crossed, smirks barely hidden as they whispered about the trailer trash comeback. Sarah had pedaled over with Lucas before her diner shift, her face a mask of quiet worry under the brim of her faded cap. She squeezed his hand as the Angels rolled in, the ground trembling under the onslaught of engines. "Be careful, kiddo," she murmured, her voice carrying the faint scent of coffee grounds from her apron. "These men, they seem solid, but life's full of twists." Lucas nodded, but his gaze locked on Hawk, who dismounted with a nod that felt like permission to stand taller. Hawk approached, his boots kicking up dust that swirled like whispered secrets. "Ready to show 'em what she's got?" he asked, clapping a hand on the boy's shoulder. The touch was firm, grounding, like the weight of a shared vow. Lucas swallowed, the knot in his throat easing. "Yeah, thanks to you all." Around them, the Angels spread out, not crowding but present, a circle of leather and loyalty that turned heads. Marcus knelt by Red, giving the chain a final check, his massive hands gentle as if handling fragile hope. "She's purring now, kid. Ride like you mean it." The race marshal, a grizzled local with a clipboard, eyed the bikers warily, but waved the start. A pistol cracked the air, and the entrance surged forward, pedals whirring, tires spitting gravel. Lucas shot out strong, Red's upgrades giving him an edge he hadn't known, the wind whipping his hair as he pulled ahead of the pack. The crowd's murmur shifted from skepticism to surprise, cheers rippling as he held second place, Tyler breathing hard in third. For a moment, it was pure. The rush of motion, the blur of booths and faces, the sun warming his back like approval from above. But as Lucas rounded the final bend, a shadow fell across the track. Tyler veered close, too close, his elbow jabbing out in a calculated nudge. Red wobbled, tires skidding on loose dirt, and Lucas fought to stay upright, heart pounding like a drum in his ears. The crowd gasped, but no whistle blew. The marshal looked away, conveniently distracted. It wasn't an accident, it was a message, the kind that echoed the night's unseen watchers. Hawk's eyes narrowed from the sidelines, his fists clenching at his sides. He'd seen moves like that before, in back-alley scraps and worse, where the powerful cheated to keep the scales tipped. Jacob leaned in, voice low. That's no kid's game. Someone's pulling strings. The angels shifted, a subtle ripple of readiness as Lucas crossed the finish in a gritty third, dust-caked but unbroken. He dismounted, chest heaving, and Tyler slunk over with a false grin. Close one, Trash. Next time, stay in your lane. Before Lucas could retort, Hawk was there, his presence parting the air like a blade. Next time, there won't be one if you pull that again. His tone was even, laced with the steel of a man who'd faced down bigger threats. Tyler faltered, glancing to the sidelines where Deputy Harlan watched from his cruiser, arms folded, a smug tilt to his hat. The connection clicked for Hawk. The bullies weren't just brats, they were shielded, part of the web squeezing Willow Creek dry. Sarah rushed to Lucas, wiping grit from his face with her sleeve, her eyes flicking to the deputy with unspoken fear. "We should go," she whispered, but Hawk shook his head. "Not yet. This isn't over." He turned to his crew, the signal unspoken. "Form up." The angels gathered around the boy and his mom, a human barricade of vests and resolve. Whispers spread through the crowd. Rumors of the sheriff's ties to local lenders, families evicted for debts that smelled of extortion. Hawk had pieced it together overnight, fueled by memories of Rico's last words. "Watch the little guys, Hawk. They're the ones who pay when we don't." As the fair wound down, Harlan sauntered over, his deputies trailing like echoes. The scent of his cheap cologne cut through the dust, cloying and false. "Fine riding, folks. But stirring dust ain't the same as cleaning house. Boy here's family owes the town. Big time. You outsiders best not meddle in collections." His eyes bored into Hawk, a challenge wrapped in warning. Hawk met it head-on, the dog tags cool against his skin, a reminder of promises that outlasted badges. Collections? Sounds like theft dressed up. We meddle when honor calls. No raised voices, just the quiet thunder of truth. The crowd hushed, sensing the shift from race to reckoning. Sarah gripped Lucas's hand tighter, a flicker of steel in her weary eyes. For the first time, she saw in these riders not danger, but the family her blood had failed to be. Harlan's mustache twitched, but he backed off, muttering about watching the roads. As he retreated, Hawk knelt to Lucas's level, the boy's face a mix of triumph and tremor. "That shove?" "It wasn't random, but neither are we. Stick close. We ride together now." The words sealed it, a vow echoing Rico's, binding the angels to this fight. Marcus revved his bike nearby, the roar a promise of motion, of justice rolling in like dawn. By midday, the convoy escorted Lucas and Sarah home, bikes flanking the Schwinn like guardians. The trailer park paths, rutted and shadowed, felt less hostile under their watch. But as they crested the hill, a glint caught Hawk's eye. Tires hidden in the underbrush, men scattering like roaches. The threats were closing, corruption's tendrils reaching for the vulnerable. Hawk's scar ached with old ghosts, but purpose burned hotter. This wasn't just about a bike anymore. It was redemption's ride, loyalty's engine turning against the dark heart of Willow Creek. The afternoon stretched ahead, heavy with unspoken storms, pulling them deeper into the fray. The afternoon sun beat down on the trailer park like a relentless interrogator, turning the air thick with the scent of sun-baked earth and distant rain. Hawk's convoy rolled to a halt at the edge of the rutted paths, engines cutting off in a cascade of fading echoes that left only the chirp of cicadas and the faint creak of chain-link fences. Lucas chained Red to the familiar porch post, his hands steadier now, but his eyes scanned the shadows where the underbrush met the trailers, places where secrets hid like smoke. Sarah dismounted her own battered bike, borrowed from a neighbor, and shot Hawk a look that mixed gratitude with the wariness of a woman who'd learned to trust sparingly. "Thanks for the escort," she said, her voice low, carrying the faint lilt of exhaustion from years of double shifts. "But you don't have to babysit us. We've managed this long." Her words were a shield, thin but defiant, protecting the fragile world she'd built from scraps. Hawk swung off his Harley, the leather of his vest creaking softly as he stepped closer. The dog tags beneath shifted against his chest, a cool reminder of vows that had outlived bullets and betrayals. "Managing ain't thriving, Mom. And those shadows we spotted, they're not friendly neighbors." He nodded toward the thicket where the glint of retreating tires had vanished. The disturbance still fresh in the air, like stirred dust. Marcus and Jacob dismounted nearby, their presence a quiet anchor, scanning the perimeter with eyes honed by nights in hostile lands. Lucas lingered by Red, fingers tracing the handlebars as if drawing strength from the metal. The racer's adrenaline still buzzed in his veins, mingled with the sting of that deliberate shove on the track. "They were watching last night too," he admitted, voice barely above the wind rustling the pines. "Dad said stuff like that. Guys collecting what ain't theirs. That's why he left, or disappeared." Sarah's face tightened, lines deepening around her eyes like cracks in dry soil. She placed a hand on Lucas's shoulder, the gesture maternal and fierce. "Your father's gone, and we don't dwell. But if these men are circling closer..." Her gaze met Hawk's, searching for truth in the scars that mapped his face. For the first time, the isolation of the trailer park felt pierced, not by fear, but by possibility. These riders, outsiders with their rumbling machines, offering a bridge over the chasm of their struggles. Hawk's jaw set, the weight of Rico's promise pressing like an unseen hand. He'd buried that oath under miles of highway, letting club life and personal ghosts dull its edge. But Lucas's story echoed it too clearly. A father vanishing under pressure, a boy left to fend with nothing but pride and a rusty bike. Willow Creek's corruption wasn't abstract. It was personal, a poison seeping into families like Sarah's, shielded by badges like Harlan's. "Tell me about the debts," Hawk said gently, his tone inviting without demanding. Not prying, just piecing the road ahead. Sarah hesitated, glancing at the trailer where faded curtains fluttered like hesitant flags. Inside, the space was sparse, a sagging couch, photos yellowed with time pinned to the fridge. A younger Lucas with his dad, both grinning beside that old truck named Red. She sighed, the sound heavy as exhaust. "Started small. Medical bills after my accident at the mill, then the diner cut hours. Some lender showed up, slick talk, high interest, said it was for the community fund. But it's all tied to the sheriff's office. Harlan's crew handles the reminders. Rough visits, broken windows. Your man's shoved today. That's them testing, seeing if we'll fold quiet." Jacob, leaning against his bike with arms crossed, let out a low whistle that cut the tension like a knife through fog. "Sounds like a racket dressed in law. Seen it in border towns, powerful folks squeezing the weak, calling it order." His words hung, evoking memories of patrols where justice wore fatigues, not vests, but the fight was the same. Standing for the overlooked. Hawk nodded, the pieces aligning like gears in a well-oiled machine. The fairground mockery, the track sabotage, the lurking shadows, it all stemmed from the same rotten root. Protecting Lucas wasn't just kindness. It was fulfilling the vow to Rico, redeeming the years he'd ridden away from such calls. "We don't fold," he said, voice steady as sunrise. "Angels ride for family, the chosen kind. You two in, we'll uncover this, make it right without the fists." Lucas's eyes lit, a spark igniting in the boy's chest, chasing away the humiliation of yesterday's laughs. Sarah searched their faces, these men marked by their own losses, offering loyalty without strings. The air shifted, carrying the faint tang of pine and possibility. "All right," she whispered, the word a turning point binding their worlds in quiet alliance. As the sun arced higher, the group moved inside the trailer, the door creaking shut like a seal on secrets shared. Hawk spread a worn map on the rickety table, the paper crinkling under calloused fingers, while Marcus brewed coffee from a dented pot, the aroma grounding the room in normalcy amid brewing storm. They plotted softly, scouting the lender's office on the town's edge, a nondescript building with blinds always drawn, talking to diner regulars for whispers of Harlan's dealings, keeping eyes on the trailer park paths where threats prowled. Outside, the convoy waited, engines silent but vigilant, chrome glinting like watchful eyes. Jacob stepped out to check the perimeter, his boots crunching gravel, when a distant rumble, not bikes but a truck, echoed from the main road. He signaled back, tense but controlled. False alarm, a delivery rig, oblivious. But the incident underscored the fragility, the way corruption lurked just beyond the ordinary. Hours slipped by in hushed strategy, the trailer's walls seeming to lean in, protective. Lucas sketched details from memory, vehicles he'd seen, faces in the dark, his voice gaining strength, transforming from victim to ally. Hawk watched, pride swelling like a rising tide. This boy carried the same stubborn fire Rico had, the kind that outlasted storms. By late afternoon, as shadows lengthened across the park, Hawk stood to leave, the plan set. A midnight ride to gather evidence, silent as ghosts on the wind. "Rest easy tonight," he told Sarah, his hand briefly on the door frame, a gesture of unspoken guardianship. "We've got your backs." She nodded, a tentative smile breaking through, the first in what felt like ages. The angels mounted up, the convoy roaring to life in a symphony of power that vibrated through the ground, scattering birds from the pines. Lucas and Sarah watched from the porch, the dust plume rising like a banner of hope. But as the bikes faded toward the horizon, a single sedan crept from a side path, headlights off, trailing at a distance. Harlan's web tightened, sensing the interference, but Hawk's rear view caught the tail. He signaled Marcus with a gloved hand, awareness, not aggression. The road twisted ahead, carrying them back to the motel, where the fire pit awaited for deeper talks. Hawk's mind raced with the day's revelations. Debts as weapons, a sheriff as puppeteer, a family's quiet desperation. Redemption wasn't a distant shore. It was this ride, honoring promises through action, forging chosen bonds against the tide of cynicism. Willow Creek's secrets simmered, ready to boil, but the angel's loyalty burned brighter, pulling Lucas's world from the brink into light. If this story's gripping your soul, hit that like button now. It fuels these journeys of honor and heart to reach even further. The night wrapped Willow Creek in a velvet shroud, stars pricking the sky like distant campfires, while the moon cast silvery paths through the pines. At the motel, the Angel's fire pit glowed low, embers pulsing like a heartbeat as the convoy settled in after the trailer's strategy session. Hawk paced the gravel lot, his boots grinding small stones into dust, the faint scent of cooling exhaust mingling with the sharp tang of pine resin. The tailing sedan had peeled off miles back, but its shadow lingered in his mind, a reminder that Harlan's reach extended like invisible chains, binding the town in quiet fear. Marcus stoked the flames with a stick, sparks dancing upward in fleeting constellations. "That tale, Harlan's boys, no doubt. They're spooked. Our ride to the trailer shook 'em." His voice rumbled deep, echoing the war stories etched in his tattoos. Where faded ink told of brothers lost to sand and shrapnel, Jacob nodded from his perch on a bike seat, sharpening a pocket knife with rhythmic scrapes that cut the night's hush. "Plan's solid. Slip into the lender's office after midnight, grab ledgers or whatever they've got. No noise, no traces. But if they're watching Lucas's place..." Hawk stopped pacing, his silhouette stark against the firelight, scars pulling tight as he clenched his jaw. The dog tags under his vest felt heavier now, Rico's voice whispering through the years, "Protect the little guys, Hawk. They're the real warriors." He'd failed that promise once, riding away after the desert, letting club life bury the guilt under miles of blacktop. But Lucas's face, stubborn, wide-eyed, had dragged it back, raw and insistent. This wasn't just a boys' fight. It was redemption's engine, revving against the corruption that mirrored his own past regrets. "We watched the trailer too," he said finally, voice gravel over steel. "Split the crew. Half on recon at the office, half circling the park. Loyalty means covering all flanks." The angels murmured agreement. The fire's warmth a brief comfort against the chill of purpose. They geared up in silence, vests zipped, gloves tugged on, the clink of tools and chains a symphony of readiness. Hawk mounted first, his Harley coughing to life with a throaty roar that shattered the quiet, headlights slicing the dark like blades. The convoy divided as planned, engines fading into separate paths, Marcus leading the office team toward the town's dim edge, where the lender's squat building hunkered like a secretive beast, blinds drawn against prying eyes. Miles away, in the trailer park's shadowed heart, Lucas lay awake on his narrow bunk, the thin walls creaking under the night's breath. Red's chain outside rattled faintly in the breeze, a sentinel sound that both soothed and stirred him. Sarah slept fitfully in the next room, her breathing uneven, laced with dreams of better days before the debts piled like storm clouds. The day's alliance with the angels had kindled a fragile hope in her chest, a warmth she'd forgotten, like sunlight breaking through fog, but doubt gnawed at the edges. These men, with their rumbling machines and scarred histories, promised more than her blood family ever had, yet trust was a luxury she'd long sacrificed. A soft scrape outside jolted Lucas upright, heart slamming like a piston. He slipped to the window, peering through the gap in the curtains. Moonlight revealed nothing at first, just the familiar ruts and overgrown weeds. But then a flicker, a silhouette detaching from the underbrush, moving low toward the porch, not an animal, too deliberate, too human. Panic clawed his throat, memories of his dad's hurried whispers flooding back. "They're coming for what's owed, son. Stay hidden." Lucas fumbled for his sneakers, pulse thundering, but before he could move, another shadow stirred. This one bulkier, emerging from the pines with the quiet step of experience. It was Jacob, his lean frame melting from the dark like a ghost, hand raised in a silent halt. Behind him, two more angels materialized, bikes stashed hidden in the tree line, their presence a whispered shield. Jacob pressed a finger to his lips, nodding toward the intruder's path. Lucas exhaled shakily, adrenaline shifting from fear to fierce alliance. He cracked the door just enough, the hinges sighing like a secret shared. "They're here," he breathed, voice taut as wire. Jacob's eyes, sharp in the dim light, flicked to the approaching figure. A lone man in dark clothes, carrying what looked like a satchel, steps cautious but determined. "Stay inside, kid. We've got this." The angels fanned out, silent as smoke, flanking the intruder without a sound. The man froze mid-step, sensing the encirclement, his breath hitching audibly in the still air. Moonlight glinted off a badge on his belt, not Harlan's polished shine, but a deputy's dull gleam, marking him as part of the web. Meanwhile, at the lender's office, Marcus's team ghosted through the back alleys. The building's rear door, a shadowed maw under a flickering security light. The air hung heavy with the musty scent of old paper and stale coffee. Windows dark, save for a faint glow from within. Someone burning the midnight oil or covering tracks. Marcus signaled, and they slipped in through a loose panel, boots muffled on worn linoleum. Inside, files loomed in stacks, the air thick with dust motes dancing in their flashlight beams. Ledgers whispered of the racket, names like Sarah's crossed out in red, collections noted with Harlan's initials, sums inflated like lies told in court. One rider, a quiet veteran named Ryan with hands steady from defusing bombs overseas, rifled a drawer and pulled a folder thick with photos. Trailers marked for eviction, And families like Lucas's circled in pen. "This is it," he murmured, the words heavy as evidence. But a floorboard creaked upstairs, footsteps descending like an ill omen. Marcus tensed, the team's loyalty a taut wire. Protect the truth, protect the boy. They melted into shadows, clutching the proofs, hearts pounding in unison. Back at the trailer, the intruder spun, eyes wide, as the angels closed in. "Easy now," Jacob said, voice low and even, no threat in his stance, just unyielding presence. The man, a younger deputy, sweat beading on his brow, dropped the satchel, which spilled papers into the dirt. Demand notices, threats veiled as official forms. I was just delivering," he stammered, but his eyes darted, betraying the lie. Jacob knelt, scanning the contents under moonlight, the script damning. Deadlines for Sarah's debt, hints of force if unmet. "You're done delivering poison," Jacob replied, gathering the papers with deliberate calm. The deputy backed away, hands up, but the angels held firm, not with force, but with the weight of moral clarity, a wall of vests that spoke of chosen family over corrupt chains. He fled into the night, footsteps scrambling, leaving the air charged with victory's edge. Hawk, circling the park's perimeter on his solo watch, caught the signal flare, a brief flashlight pulse from Jacob. He revved toward the trailer, arriving as the team regrouped, faces grim, but lit with purpose. Lucas emerged, clutching the recovered papers, his small frame straight now, forged in the fire of the moment. Sarah, roused by the commotion, stood beside him, her hand on his shoulder, eyes meeting Hawk's with newfound steel. "You stopped them," she said softly, the words a bridge across their worlds. Hawk dismounted, the evidence burning in his gloved hand like a sacred text. "Not stopped, just slowed. This proves the rot, Harlan's hand in every line." The promise to Rico thrummed alive, redemption unfolding in the quiet hours, loyalty binding strangers into kin. But as dawn's first blush tainted the horizon, a distant siren wailed, Harlan's response, closing in. The angels formed up, engines whispering readiness, pulling Lucas and Sarah into the fold. The road to justice twisted sharper now, shadows yielding to light. But the storm brewed, demanding one final ride to silence the corruption forever. The first light of dawn bled across Willow Creek like a wound slowly healing, turning the pines from black silhouettes to emerald sentinels. Sirens wailed in the distance, sharp and insistent, slicing through the night's remnants as Hawk's convoy tightened around the trailer. Engines idled low, a protective growl that vibrated through the gravel, the air thick with the scent of dew-kissed earth and the metallic tang of tension. Hawk stood at the forefront, the stolen papers clutched in his fist, their edges crisp under the rising sun. Rico's dog tags pressed against his chest, a pulse of memory urging him forward, not into fury, but into the quiet steel of truth. Lucas gripped Sarah's hand, his face pale but set, the boy's eyes reflecting the same fire that had ignited in Hawk years ago under desert skies. "They're coming for us," he whispered, the words hanging like fog, but Sarah squeezed back, her voice steady for the first time in moons, not alone anymore. The angels formed a living barrier, Marcus's bulk a wall of resolve, Jacob's sharp gaze scanning the road, Ryan pocketing the folder of photos with hands that had steadied worse than this. 50 riders, leather creaking in the chill, vests emblazoned with their emblem. Not symbols of chaos, but badges of chosen kin, ready to stand where blood had faltered. The sedans burst into view first, tires screeching as they skidded to a halt at the park's entrance. Dust plumes rising like angry spirits. Harlan leaped out, badge flashing in the dawn light, his face twisted in a snarl that betrayed the mask of authority. 4 deputies flanked him, shotguns slung low, the morning air filling with their barked commands. "Step aside! This is official business, eviction and arrest for outstanding debts." Harlan's eyes locked on the papers in Hawk's hand, recognition dawning like a storm cloud. Behind him, the lender's men emerged from a trailing truck, faces gaunt with the complicity of cowards, tools of a system rotten to its core. Hawk didn't flinch, his boots planted firm in the dirt, the sun warming his back like an old friend's nod. The promise to Rico echoed in his veins, a vow renewed not in vengeance, but in the unbreaking line of honor. Official, these say different. He held up the documents, the ledger's damning script visible even from afar, forged signatures, inflated sums, Harlan's initials scrawled like signatures on a confession. The crowd stirred from trailers, doors creaking open, faces peering from windows, diner workers, mill hands, families long silenced by fear. Whispers rippled, the scent of fresh coffee from inside mingling with the exhaust, grounding the moment in the everyday fight for dignity. Harlan's mustache quivered, his hand twitching toward his holster, but Marcus stepped forward, voice booming like thunder over gravel. "Easy, lawman. We're not here for blood, just light on your shadows." The angels held their ground, no weapons drawn, just the unbreakable wall of brotherhood, engines rumbling in unison as if the earth itself protested the corruption. Jacob tossed the spilled satchel's contents at Harlan's feet, demand notices fluttering like fallen leaves, exposing the threats veiled as procedure. The deputies hesitated, eyes darting, the weight of witnessed truth cracking their resolve. "You outsiders think you can waltz in and play judge?" Harlan spat, advancing a step, but his voice cracked, the bluster thinning under the dawn's unforgiving glare. Sarah pushed forward then, Lucas at her side, her chin lifted in the quiet ferocity of a mother reclaiming her world. "We've paid enough. In fear, in silence, these papers. They show your hand, Harlan. The whole town's seeing it now." Her words cut deeper than any blade, the crowd murmuring louder, phones emerging to capture the standoff, flashes like stars in the morning light. Hawk met Harlan's glare, the scar on his cheek pulling taut, memories of Rico's last breath flooding back, the blood-soaked sand, the plea to protect the vulnerable. He'd ridden from that pain, letting it scar over, but Lucas's stand mirrored it, pulling the promise into sharp focus. "This ends today," Hawk said, his tone even, carrying the gravel of roads traveled and regrets shed. "No more squeezing the forgotten. Ride out clean or the truth rides with us, to every station, every ear that matters." He nodded to Ryan, who held up the photo folder, images of marked homes, a visual indictment, the air humming with the click of recording devices. The deputies shifted uneasily, one younger man lowering his shotgun, face paling as the crowd swelled, neighbors emerging, voices rising in a chorus of long-buried outrage. Tyler's crew slunk from the edges, the bully's smirks gone, replaced by the shame of complicity in a larger wrong. Harlan's empire crumbled in that moment, not with a bang, but with the silent erosion of exposure, the moral weight too heavy for his bought badge. He backed toward his car, deputies following, the sirens falling silent as reality dawned. "This ain't over," he muttered. But the words rang hollow, swallowed by the growing hum of engines and voices united. As the sedans retreated, tail lights fading into the sun's climb, the trailer park exhaled, a collective breath of release. Hawk knelt to Lucas, the boy's shoulders squaring under the gaze of his new family. "You rode true, kid. Red's proud, and so's your dad, wherever he is." Lucas nodded, tears tracing clean paths through the dust on his cheeks, the weight of isolation lifting like mist, burned away. Sarah embraced Hawk briefly, the scent of lavender and resolve clinging to her, a silent thank you that bound them all. The angels revved to life, not in triumph's roar, but in a steady hum that escorted the dawn's peace. Hawk lingered last, watching Lucas unchaining Red, the bike's frame catching the light like a promise kept. Redemption washed over him, Rico's ghost quieted at last. The vow fulfilled in actions that echoed louder than any engine. Willow Creek stirred anew, corruption's chains broken by loyalty's quiet thunder, families chosen standing tall against the cynical tide. The road stretched open, carrying them forward, not away, but toward horizons of honor, where scars became stories of strength. The convoy rolled out as the sun crested fully, chrome flashing farewell, leaving behind a town forever changed. In the distance engines faded, but the bond endured, a legacy of silent courage whispering through the pines. Thank you for riding this journey with us. If these tales of honor and heart moved you, subscribe for more. Your support keeps the stories rolling.